February 1959, 9 experienced hikers set out into the Ural Mountains. They never came back. When searchers found their tent, it was ripped open from the inside. They had fled into the freezing night, some without shoes, some without clothes. What could be so terrifying that you would choose to freeze to death rather than stay one more second inside? This is the ghost of Dyatlov Pass. Welcome to history's shadow. Stay curious. The group was led by Igor Dyatlov, a brilliant engineering student. They were strong, skilled, and prepared for the brutal Russian winter. Their diaries show a group full of hope, singing songs and sharing laughter as they ascended the Mountain of the Dead. They didn't know the name was a prophecy. On February 1st, they pitched their tent on the slopes of Kolatsiakul. The weather was worsening. They ate their final meal, a slice of ham and bread. The last photo taken shows them struggling against the blizzard. Something changed that night. Something entered the camp that logic cannot explain. Analysis shows the tent was cut from the inside with a knife. This was a blind panic. They didn't use the door. They ripped through the canvas and ran. They left their boots, their coats, and their flashlights behind. They ran into a wall of darkness and minus 30-degree cold. What were they running from? Searchers found the first 2 bodies near a cedar tree, a mile away. They were dressed only in underwear. Their hands were burned, as if they had tried to climb the tree to escape something on the ground. Below them, the remains of a small fire. They died shivering, looking back at their tent. The next bodies were found later. These were different. They had massive internal injuries, broken ribs and crushed skulls, but no bruises on the skin. It was as if they had been hit by a car or an incredible force of pressure. One woman was missing her tongue. Her eyes were gone. The silence was absolute. As the Soviet investigators combed through the frozen remains of the camp, they brought out Geiger counters. To their absolute horror, the clothing of several victims showed high levels of radiation. How? There were no nuclear facilities for hundreds of miles. The snow was pure, but the fabric was poisoned. Some theorized they had stumbled into a secret military testing zone. Others believed the radiation came from above. The mystery didn't just point to a physical killer, but to an invisible, silent force that had marked them before they died. The official report was quickly classified, buried under layers of Soviet bureaucracy, leaving the radiation as a ghost in the files. That same night, another group of hikers, miles away, reported something strange in the sky. They saw glowing orange spheres hovering over the mountains, moving with a silent, unnatural grace. For years, witnesses across the Ural region had seen these lights. Could these spheres be responsible for the panic at the tent? Did the Dyatlov group see something they were never meant to see? The lights vanished into the clouds, leaving only the sound of the wind. In the dark history of Russia, these lights are often seen near tragedies. They are the silent witnesses to the mountain's hunger. Science offers a more terrifying explanation: infrasound. Under certain wind conditions, the mountain peaks can create a low-frequency sound that is below the human range of hearing. But even if you can't hear it, your body feels it. It triggers an overwhelming primal sense of dread and panic. It makes you feel like you are being hunted by an invisible predator. Scientists believe this sound could have vibrated inside the tent, driving the hikers into a state of madness. A sound so powerful it forced them to cut their way out and run into the cold, fleeing a monster that was made entirely of air. The local Mansi people have long avoided Kolatsiakul. In their language, the name translates to the Mountain of the Dead. Ancient legends tell of 9 hunters who once vanished on this same slope, found dead in the same mysterious way. The Mansi believed the mountain was home to spirits that did not want to be disturbed. Initially, the police suspected the Mansi had killed the hikers, but there were no tracks. No signs of an ambush, only the footprints of the hikers themselves, walking slowly, almost calmly, towards their doom. The spirits, it seems, do not need weapons to kill. The Cold War was at its peak in 1959. The Soviet Union was a land of secrets and hidden bases. Many believe the Dyatlov group accidentally entered a parachute mine testing area. These mines explode in the air, creating a massive pressure wave that can crush bones without leaving a mark. This would explain the broken ribs and the cracked skulls. It would also explain why the government was so desperate to close the case. Were they collateral damage in a race for military power? The files remain partially redacted, a testament to a state that valued its secrets more than the lives of its children. But how do we explain Lyudmila Dubinina? When she was found in a ravine months later, she was missing her tongue and parts of her face. Some say it was the work of scavengers, animals eating the softest parts of the body. But the medical reports were hesitant. The cuts were precise. It was as if something had been removed for a reason. This detail has fueled the most horrific theories, from extraterrestrial biological sampling to ritualistic sacrifice. The image of a young woman frozen in time, her voice literally taken from her, remains the most haunting image of the entire incident. When the families finally saw the bodies of their loved ones at the funerals, they were met with a sight that defied nature. The skin of the hikers had turned a strange, deep orange-brown color. Their hair had turned gray. Some looked like they had aged decades in a single night. The official cause was listed as hypothermia, but the mourners knew better. Cold makes skin blue or pale, not orange. It was as if they had been cooked from the inside out, or exposed to a chemical that stained their very souls. The coffins were closed quickly, and the families were told to stay silent. But the orange skin remains a mark of a mystery that the Soviet state could never truly wash away. The lead investigator, Lev Ivanov, was a man of logic and law. But years later, after the Soviet Union collapsed, he confessed something terrifying. He admitted that he was ordered to close the case by high-ranking officials. He had found evidence of flying spheres and radiation that he wasn't allowed to put in the final report. Ivanov died believing that the hikers had encountered something extraterrestrial, something that the military was desperately trying to capture or hide. His private notes suggest a scene of cosmic violence, where human beings were nothing more than insects caught in a storm of advanced technology. He spent his final years haunted by the eyes of the young hikers, staring at him from the snow. Some theorists suggest a much more grounded, yet equally dark explanation. The hikers were not alone on that mountain. They may have stumbled upon a group of Soviet cleaners, special forces units tasked with recovering fallen satellites or secret spy planes. If the hikers saw something they shouldn't have, they became witnesses that couldn't be allowed to live. This would explain why the tent was cut from the inside. It was a forced evacuation. The hikers were driven out into the cold at gunpoint, left to freeze so that their deaths would look like an accident. In the heart of the Cold War, a few students were a small price to pay for the security of the motherland. Critics of the paranormal point to a medical phenomenon called paradoxical undressing. In the final stages of hypothermia, the brain malfunctions. The victim feels a sudden burning heat, even though they are freezing to death. This causes them to rip off their clothes in a desperate attempt to cool down. It is a cruel trick of the body. While this explains why they were found in their underwear, it doesn't explain the broken bones. It doesn't explain why they ran a mile away from the only source of warmth they had. Logic tells us one thing, but the facts on the ground tell us another. The mountain doesn't just kill the body, it confuses the mind until you become your own worst enemy. There was a 10th hiker, Yuri Yudin. He had to turn back early due to joint pain, leaving his friends to continue without him. He was the one who had to identify their frozen bodies and their blood-stained clothes. For the rest of his life, Yudin lived with a crushing survivor's guilt. He often said, "If I had 1,000 lives, I would give them all to know what happened to my friends that night." He died in 2013, taking the last personal connection to the group with him. His only wish was to be buried at Dyatlov Pass, to finally rejoin the friends he had left behind in the snow. Even in death, the mountain calls its own. In 2021, a new study suggested a slab avalanche, a rare type of snowslide that could have hit the tent while they slept. The heavy snow would have crushed their ribs, forcing them to cut their way out before a second slide came. It's a neat, logical explanation that satisfies the modern mind. But for those who have stood on the slopes of Kholat Shachel, the theory feels hollow. It doesn't explain the radiation. It doesn't explain the missing tongue. It doesn't explain why they walked in a neat line away from the tent instead of running. Sometimes, science is just a blanket we use to cover a truth that is too cold to face. Today, Dyatlov Pass is a place of pilgrimage for those obsessed with the unknown. New hikers go there every year, looking for answers, but the mountain remains silent. The wind still howls through the same cedar trees, and the snow still hides the secrets of 1959. Some say the energy of the place has changed, that you can feel the panic in the air. The Mountain of the Dead earned its name, and it guards its reputation with a chilling patience. Every mystery has a solution, but some solutions are buried so deep in the permafrost that they may never see the light of day. The hikers of the Dyatlov group are not just victims, they are legends in the snow. As we close the files on Dyatlov Pass, we are left with more questions than answers. Was it a military cover-up, an alien encounter, or a tragic dance with the forces of nature? Perhaps the truth is a mixture of all three. But one thing is certain. On that frozen night in 1959, 9 lives were extinguished in a moment of pure terror. They died together, huddling for warmth in a world that had turned against them. Their story is a reminder of how small we are against the vast, dark wilderness. Thank you for walking through the shadows with us. Leave your theory in the comments. We are History's Shadow. Stay curious.